We want to bring you an update now on a CBC News exclusive as reported by our colleague Ashley Burke. Member of Parliament Marwan Tabbara appeared in court today. The Kitchener area MP was arrested in April for assault, break-and-enter and criminal harassment. He'll be back in a Guelph, Ontario courtroom at the end of August, but this is not the first time Tabbara has been investigated. Ashley joins us now with the rest of the story. Hey, Ashley. So what exactly did you learn about prior allegations against Tabbara?
Well, what we learned is that the Liberal Party launched an internal investigation during the last mandate. We spoke to sources who wanted to not be named because they were afraid of being blacklisted from the Liberal Party. They worried that it could negatively impact their career. And what we found out is that the party investigated Marwan Tabbara for allegations about his misconduct, in particular sexual harassment claims. Now, this involves claims of inappropriately touching a female staffer, as well directing lewd, unwanted comments at this individual. This dates back to the 2015 election campaign, and we're told that this was brought up to the party on multiple occasions over the last 5 years, but it wasn't taken seriously until recently. The Liberal Party launched an internal investigation, and CBC News has confirmed that the party found that some of the allegations are substantiated, but it's not clear if there was consequences. We do know that it likely played a role in the greenlighting process for Tabbara in the last election. It took about 6 to 8 months, we're told by a government source, for Tabbara to be greenlit to run, and that's unusual for an incumbent. Usually it can take, for example, about a month or so for someone that's already been heavily vetted in the past.
And Ashley, what was the Prime Minister's response? He got a lot of questions about this today.
Yeah, Justin Trudeau has had a zero-tolerance policy for allegations of misconduct in the past. He has bounced other members of Parliament from his caucus over similar claims like this. So he did face questions today about what did he know? And if he did know about Tabbara's case, why did he allow him to run in the 2019 election? He was quite tight-lipped, citing confidentiality reasons. As well, we asked the Deputy Prime Minister about this case too. Here's what they both had to say.
Whenever there are allegations against members of the Liberal Party, part of the process is for the leader to be informed.
The case that you refer to is very disappointing and troubling for us all. It is being investigated very carefully by us now.
Freeland also spoke today about how the Trudeau government is a feminist government, that they take sexual harassment seriously. In the past, MPs have fought for anti-harassment policies on Parliament Hill. So I think that's why they faced so many questions specifically today about this, about what their standards are right now. And we wanted to know what the consequences were for Tabbara. There is a process, a respectful workplace process that's involved in these investigations where there are consequences. In serious cases, someone can be terminated. In less serious, it could be something like training, an apology, things like that. But the government today is saying, look, we can't comment because we have to protect the confidentiality and the privacy of the people involved in this. So there are still a lot of unanswered questions about what the government do and why it didn't take more action.
All right, thanks, Ashley. The CBC's Ashley Burke with her exclusive story. Here to assess now the possible implications of the handling of the allegations against MP Marwan Tabbara is the Power Panel senior writer for Maclean's, Paul Wells, is with us. Marika Walsh of the Globe and Mail is here too, and Sherelle Evelyn, managing editor of the Hill Times, joins us as well. Hi, all three of you. Great to see you on this Friday evening.
Hey, guys.
Marika, I'm going to start with you. So a lot of questions to the Prime Minister today. Tell me a bit about his response and a bit of your analysis of it.
What struck me the most from his response today is that the quote-unquote zero tolerance policy that he laid out in 2017 was not mentioned again today. So he was asked specifically about that policy and what the rule is now. And in response, he said things like they take it extremely seriously. There is a quote-unquote rigorous process. But this notion of the zero tolerance policy that Trudeau unveiled in the height of the Me Too movement seems to have disappeared or fallen off the agenda.
Yeah, Sherelle, at least it doesn't appear that it was applied in this case. And you could see that was the genesis of a lot of questions to the Prime Minister, right? Like, you laid out this policy and even to the Deputy Prime Minister, you've said you have zero tolerance. But in this case, some of the claims were substantiated, but he was allowed to become, to stay on as a candidate.
Yeah, and it's something that you've kind of seen over the last few years evolve in the Prime Minister's response to some of these things back in 2014, where he was very quick to boot MPs out of his caucus and not let them run for election after a complaint had come from another NDP MP. And then that kind of evolved into the case with Darshan King, who resigned from caucus in 2017 after he had allegations made against him by a staffer. And then we got to Kent Hare in 2018. He left cabinet, but he was still in the Liberal caucus, and as well was a senior staffer in the PMO who also had complaints laid against him in 2018. He didn't leave until the whole investigation was complete. So there's this element of zero tolerance that used to be spoken of isn't being talked about anymore, and it doesn't really seem to be applicable in the last few years.
What do you make of that evolution, Paul?
Well, the policy was essentially improvised before the 2015 election for two sitting members of Parliament who were kicked out of caucus, and the then leader of the third place party, Justin Trudeau, was quick to say that he would have a policy of zero tolerance. Unfortunately, that policy of zero tolerance caused him a lot of trouble throughout his first mandate in government. And a strict application of that policy would require that Justin Trudeau not be allowed to run for the Liberal Party, because there were allegations against him. The woman who made the allegations, which are vague and distant in the past, insists that she doesn't sort of want to pursue the claims, but she also insists that what she says is true. I think Justin Trudeau has decided that he'd rather proceed case by case. Mr. Tabbara was running in a riding which is a tough win for Liberals in elections when the Conservatives are strong. And I think they decided that on balance, they'd rather have him run and defend that riding.
I think also what sort of heightens interest in all of this, Marika, and certainly I think why the Prime Minister is facing a lot of questions is because when the original charges came to light, the whole story then was the Prime Minister insisted he had just found out, and they had no prior knowledge of anything to do. I mean, I guess specifically with those charges, but certainly he didn't indicate at the time, or his government wasn't indicating that they knew that this MP had issues or there were some red flags in the past, right? Like they seemed as taken aback as everyone else when that original news came to light.
Certainly, and I mean, there's so little that we know about the details of either of these cases or that can be publicized, so it's hard to draw too many links between them, but it does raise questions about, as you said, the red flags and this sort of deer in headlights look that the government gave last week or 2 weeks ago, when this first came out. And I think it does come down to, again, this question of transparency and confidentiality. There is obviously a very clear need for confidentiality to protect victims and complainants, but that shouldn't then go so far as to protect the entire case and the entire accountability on it. And I think that's a bit what we saw in the press conference with the Prime Minister today, is that you almost got no information because confidentiality could be invoked at any time. And we've asked, for example, the Chief Human Resources Officer for the House to try and find out whether any of this went through those kinds of procedures that have been set up, that have been laid out within the House of Commons. We haven't gotten a response yet, but I'm not sure that we'll get very much transparency through that route either. I guess we'll see.
And you did see, Sherelle, question after question, the Prime Minister did invoke confidentiality. It was interesting to me that later in the briefing with ministers that we see now daily at noon, the Deputy Prime Minister, Chrystia Freeland, did say that there would be or that there is some investigation that will be conducted now. But most of the time the Prime Minister was saying, I can't say more because of confidentiality.
Yeah, and it's there are so many processes that can be gone through, as Marika just alluded to. The House of Commons has its own. The Liberals brought in, C-65 in the last Parliament, which added sexual harassment to the Labour Code, so that federally regulated workplaces, including now Parliament Hill, are have those regulations and procedures. And of course, confidentiality is deeply entrenched in all of those things. But I don't know that confidentiality is something that can be used as, I guess, a crutch or a shield to hide, when the government and when the Liberals and when Mr. Trudeau himself knew about these allegations about Mr. Tabbara.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.